Yeah.
Try that again.
Let's try that all over again. Welcome to the Village of Woodbury Planning Board meeting. I ask that you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. He's not coming.
He's not coming.
Hold on.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. I would like it noted for the record that I will be using my number 2 pencil tonight to take all notes. All right, has the board had a chance to look over the meeting minutes from June 5th?
Yes.
All right, I'll offer a motion to accept those minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Has the board had a chance to look over the meeting minutes from 5:15?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I'll offer a motion to accept those minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That's the easy stuff. First item on the agenda, Valtov. Review and discuss documents submitted for site plan, special permit, and ARB for a warehouse and office. Said property is located at 24 Laurel Lane in Central Valley, is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map, Section 226, Block 1, Lots 23.
Good evening, my name is Jonathan Millen. I'm a licensed professional land surveyor, and I'm representing Mr. Balatov with respect to a proposed site plan. It's a 3.6 acre property, and it's located on Laurel Lane. Currently, it's got a single residence on it and a couple of outbuildings. We're proposing a commercial building under the use permitted, special use permitted, option 3. And Mr. Balatov anticipates using that building for storage. The existing residence that's on the property right now, we're proposing to convert that to an office building.
Questions for the applicant? Natalie?
Hello. All right, so this is the applicant's first appearance before this board, although there have been several other applications associated with this property that really didn't get past initial discussions. Our memo notes that we had some questions regarding the operation of all of the buildings on site together and whether or not they supported each other or would be considered principal uses in their own right. So I think from Mr. Millen's representation, you know, the one warehouse is obviously what it is, and then the single-family residence will be converted to an office.
Correct.
So our question, I guess, is does the office and the warehouse work together, or would
Yes.
they would be working together? Okay.
Yes.
And then the other question that we had was regarding the shed and the garage on site. So would they continue to be used, and how do they?
Open to continue to use it strictly for maintenance, storage of maintenance materials, that sort of thing.
Okay. So all of this information, if you would submit a revised narrative, just kind of describing how, you know, all of the buildings function on site together. And then in our next memorandum, we'll be able to look closer at the bulk criteria, considering all of the uses now that we know really it's a warehouse with the accessory office space, I think, is how I would consider it. But again, you know, we'll take a closer look when we receive that revised narrative. We also have looked at the shed and the garage, and obviously if the applicant wants to continue with their use, they do not conform with certain setbacks in the code. So we've recommended that you refer to that to your building inspector for an opinion on whether or not those could be considered legally pre-existing non-conforming conditions. We've also asked you to consider referring this application to your building inspector for an interpretation on what constitutes the front, rear, and side yard setbacks, just based on the unique shape of the lot. It's not clear to us necessarily also how the buildings are placed and where their front entrances are, I think also dictates that code definition or those code definitions. Future plan submissions should include calculations for net lot area as well as coverage to confirm compliance with the code. We've asked for additional information on parking calculations, or to confirm parking calculations. With respect to water and sewer, our memo notes that the village is under a moratorium for water supply, but also that the sewer capacity is at a deficit. We've also requested details on the service connections and calculations supporting the information in the projected water and sewer demand form. An erosion and sediment control and SWIP are going to be required at the appropriate time. This application is subject to the water quality protection overlay regulations. So we've asked for the limits of Woodbury Creek to be shown and certified on the map, as well as the 50-foot riparian and the 100-foot buffer, so that the board can consider what restrictions there are to the proposed development based on the regulations. We've also noted that this property is almost entirely within the floodplain, so the applicant will be required to comply with Chapter 159 of the Village Code. And as you develop your plans, you'll want to consider certain requirements of the code as far as, the first floor elevation above the floodplain and things like that. So, ARB materials are going to be required for the warehouse, and that should be submitted at the appropriate time. Public hearing will be required, and we recommend you refer this to the ESOs once you have additional information supporting the application. And that's all I have.
Questions for Natalie? No?
Good evening, Philip Greeley, Colliers Engineering and Design. We have a memo dated June 20th, 6 items listed. The last item is just a repeat of what Natalie said about the ESOs. We'd like to see some estimates of the peak hour trip generation for the property based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. The location in terms of, we'd like to have more details on the width of the roadway and the access and turning tracks for vehicles. We note that the access to this property, there's an 11-foot clearance under the railroad, so if it's going to be used as a warehouse, it's going to have to be some indication of what types of vehicles will be coming here. We'd like to see that. The relationship of this property and the recently approved 8 Laura Lane in terms of the roadway configuration, whether or not there needs to be any striping or curbing at the access point should be looked at. And then the last item is at the intersection of Valley Avenue and Laura Lane at the terminus there. There were certain improvements that were to be implemented as part of the 8 Laura Lane project. If those haven't gotten completed by the time this moves forward, those will have to be completed and coordinated with the highway superintendent. Some signing and striping improvements. So those are the items, and once we get some more information, we'll be able to give you final comments.
Okay.
Questions from the board for Phil?
No, I do have a couple for, yeah.
Go ahead.
Go back.
Yeah, go ahead.
What kind of truck traffic are you guys assuming you're going to be coming through? Trips per day, how many trucks per day? Like Phil said, size of trucks.
Right.
Any idea on that yet?
Specifically, the trucks would be limited to the smaller types of trucks you see from the truck rental agencies with the
Box
low
trucks,
hots.
things like
Yeah.
that.
We're not talking straight jobs or anything of that nature.
As far as the single-family house, you said you're going to be turning it into an office building.
Correct. Could be
House is staying the same, you're just going to do some modifications to
to
it.
the inside, that's correct.
What is the applicant proposing to store in the warehouse?
Basically, factory-type materials. Well, Mr. Balatov is here. Perhaps you could explain a little better what your intentions are.
Yeah.
You gotta come up.
Some material. Some parts, the machines,
So it's going to be machine parts, things like that, industrial?
something industrial, maybe not. I don't know yet.
Well, the board kind of needs to know what you're going to put in the warehouse. Are there going to be flammables, combustibles? You're going to, saying you have a warehouse is a very generic term.
It's important for the use of the office, so if this is accessory to that, there are regulations relating to accessory buildings, so we would need to know what the office is for, so that the accessory.
Not just the office, but what's in the actual warehouse. too.
So that,
Want to
yes.
store anything that
But
looks-
how's the office supporting the warehouse operations?
So, and you don't have to tell us tonight, but in your next submission, we're going to need to understand a little bit better of what you're looking to store in the warehouse.
Yeah, it will be some parts like air conditioning units maybe, because of its maybe HVAC company, all right? So maybe it will be roofing company. I have no idea yet. It just kind of, difficult to.
Well, like the chairman said, you don't have to exactly tell us tonight, but we will know what the gist of the business is gonna be, what's gonna be stored there. And also how the office is gonna be supporting the activities of the warehouse.
So we'll create a dialogue regarding that and submit it.
Okay.
Okay. Kelly, anything?
Yeah, as part of that, if they can submit an EAF so that you can start the seeker process.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I don't
I-
mind with that.
Just two for me. To get back on the truck issue, that's a very low bridge over there. So you're proposing to bring small trucks, I hope, because I don't want to see them rerouted through Trout Brook and through all the residential neighborhoods to get trucks underneath that
It wouldn't
bridge.
be anything bigger than your typical rented truck that you see the low height on. That would be the biggest trucks that would be coming in.
And my second comment is, being in proximity to the creek and it being in a floodplain, having parking and trucks and whatever's stored in that warehouse prone to flooding
Right.
could lead to contamination of the creek, which would violate our kind of water overlay district. So I want to make sure what's in that warehouse and how the parking's going to be and how we're going to mitigate anything going into our creek.
Right, well, in our submittal for the materials we'll be storing, we'll be sure to address that. In terms
Is
of
it-
leakage and/or.
Is it all paved or is it gravel? Because there's kind of two notes on there.
I'm sorry.
Is it all paved, the
No,
parking lot?
Right now, it's all gravel
Okay.
right now, so this is all proposed pavement.
Yeah, just because it says proposed paved and it says gravel also, so.
Well, the gravel's underneath it, you can see
Okay.
the gravel extends a little bit on the bottom. Beyond this section here.
Yeah.
You see the dark color, and then down here, you can see some of the gravel that's underneath the pavement right now.
I was received permit from engineer over here, so I will have fill it up that space level and fill it up.
Excuse me, sir. Can you speak into the mic? Because half of the room can't hear you. And I need to.
Speak into the microphone, they can't hear you.
Okay. I said I was received permit. It was 2019, I guess. Okay, and I was fill up and level at the space right there. You can see. Yeah, this space. It's level and fill by door.
It's already been leveled.
Yes, I already did. I have permit.
Okay.
And also about the trucks that can come inside. First of all, the so here is the tunnel.
Yeah.
It's 11 feet.
Yeah.
So what they can add.
Oh, that's why we're asking.
Yeah.
And it's also residential, so how many trips?
It's not 13 and 6 like the old cars and trucks. Of course, that's.
Okay. All right, so, I mean, you got a bunch of homework to do on this one.
Right, and you'll provide documents regarding all the comments.
You haven't gotten a copy yet? The building department should have sent the memos over.
I don't think we have, otherwise I'd have it, but
Do you have a copy of our memo, Jonathan?
I don't
H2M?
believe so.
Okay.
But if you've sent it, we'll just,
We'll make sure, we'll make sure you get copies of both
Okay.
Phil's and Natalie's memos, so you don't have to memorize everything.
all right? And the next
Thank you, Keith.
The next meeting for us would be,
After you after you go through those two memos, and
Right.
you answer those questions and resubmit, and then get the EAF in, and then you'll go back into the hopper.
okay. Are we completed?
Yep,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to refer some of those questions to the building
Yeah,
inspector?
I'll make the motion to refer to the building inspector for the questions on the setbacks.
I'll second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Natalie.
No problem.
All right. Next, Who's Restaurant. Review and discuss documents for site plan, special permit, and ARB for a proposed new restaurant at the former non-conforming restaurant. Said property is located at 923 Route 32 in Highland Mills and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map, Section 203, Block 1, Lot 7.1. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you tonight?
Doing great. Paul Gdansky, PE. I'm the engineer for the project from Mahwah, New Jersey.
And I'm Javier Rosado, partner at O'Keefe & McCann, attorneys for the project.
So go ahead, just give us the 1,000-foot overview right now.
Sure. So my client purchased the property about a year ago. It was formerly the Savory Grill. And basically, it's pretty straightforward. He just wants to continue the same use, the same special permit that the Savory Grill received back in '97. There's no improvements proposed at all around the site. Just inside, he'll be doing some renovations. That's basically it.
Does the board have questions for the applicant right now?
At the moment.
Natalie?
So similar to the last application, this is the first appearance of this applicant before you. As described, they propose Who's Steakhouse to occupy the former Savory Grill. As detailed in our memo, restaurant uses were not previously permitted in the CR zone, but recently new zoning now permits them. The applicant should list a bulk table reflecting the proper bulk criteria per the code. Based on a review, the lot is deficient in lot area, front yard, and it also exceeds the maximum permitted coverage. We recommend you refer this to the building inspector and work with council to determine whether or not these are pre-existing legally non-conforming conditions permitted to remain. We've also commented on parking, although primarily we defer to Colliers on these issues. We've requested a floor plan demonstrating that the parking calculations are accurate. The plan provides or indicates that 22 spaces are provided where approximately 36 may be required. We recommend you refer that also to the building inspector to determine whether or not that's a pre-existing condition permitted to remain. I'm sorry, sure. Our memo notes that some of the stalls are shown within the Route 32 right-of-way as well as on the adjacent property, which, are considered encroachments. So other approvals and/or authorization from those entities may be required for the application to proceed as shown. The site is served by private well and septic. We recommend prior to your taking action on the application that the applicant provide proof that the current systems are in good working condition. This can be accomplished by way of a pump test and water quality sampling associated with the well and a visual inspection of the septic tank and a dye test for the system. Those should be certified by the applicant's engineer and submitted for your review. The applicant has already confirmed that there are no site improvements proposed warranting a grading or lighting or landscaping plan, so those comments that we had in our memo are no longer relevant. If any, I think you didn't say that there were any improvements to the building exterior, but there may be some signage improvements, I presume.
Yes, there'll be signage,
Okay,
new
so
signage to replace the old signage.
right, so the details on that should be submitted.
No problem.
The other thing that I wanted to raise is Woodbury Creek does run parallel to this site in the rear. Therefore, the application could be subject to the water quality protection overlay regulations. Again, since there's no site disturbance, the impact on the application may not be severe, but still, the limits of Woodbury Creek should be shown on the plan, as well as the 50-foot and 100-foot riparian and buffer zones, so that you can determine any impacts. And other than that, a public hearing will be required at the appropriate time, and we defer to council on seeker recommendations.
Questions for Natalie? No? Okay. Phil?
Yes, we have a memo dated June 20th. We have 11 items. The first item is just on Section J of the EAF, should be updated to indicate what the peak hour traffic generation is for the site. The site, as you see on your plan, has 2 curb cuts, existing curb cuts, but there are also, both north and south of here, there are open cross connections to the adjacent properties, and they're they're uncontrolled, so we need to see how that will function, and I think in terms of the parking spaces that are located within the state right-of-way, there has to be a permit from New York State DOT. Typically, they do allow spaces in the right-of-way, but there would have to be a use and occupancy permit for that. The drive aisle between the building and those angled spaces in the front is not adequate, so those are going to have to be looked at, whether or not they need to be repositioned. Site distances should be shown on the driveways along Route 32. We should take a look at the previous accident history here, primarily because of the cross connections to the adjacent properties. It's a little bit of a free-for-all, and we want to just make sure that that's going to be controlled. This should be referred to New York State DOT for their review and input. Some of those parking spaces need to be looked at on the southerly portion of the building. There's not adequate drive aisles there, so again, I think we just need to have some more information on signing and striping and how the parking spaces are functioning. And I mean, those are the primary items. I think we can review it in more detail, but it should be referred to New York State DOT to make sure that your driveways conform with current standards, and the issue of the parking that's in the right-of-way has to be resolved. That's it.
Questions for Phil?
I guess if they have to remove those parking stalls in the front because the drive aisle's too tight, does that mean they are further non-conforming in terms of hitting the parking count?
They would be. They can reconfigure those. They may lose some spaces, but the most significant is the fact that those spaces are in the state right-of-way, and the state could, I don't know if there's a pre-existing use and occupancy permit. Typically on these properties, it's renewed on an annual basis with DOT.
We're going to check into that and review it because the previous owner had the
So I was
use.
just gonna ask,
Yeah.
did the previous owners also have that in place?
I don't know. That's, so either there was a permit previously issued and it's still in place, or those spaces can't be there.
Which particular part of the right-of-way?
Sir, I need you to step up to the podium, please. Thank you. You're talking down here, Phil, right, these?
Yeah, so that line along the frontage of the property is the state right-of-way. So all of those spaces along Route 32, half of those spaces are in the state right-of-way. You're not permitted to do that unless you have a use and occupancy permit. If there's a use and occupancy permit, then that's okay. Those spaces are fine. The spaces in front of the building that are at an angle, there's not adequate width for vehicles to maneuver in there. That needs to be looked at in terms of the width of the drive aisle, and the angle of those spaces may have to be adjusted accordingly.
Thank you. That's what I didn't understand. Thank you.
So Chris, if they had to lose some of those stalls, I know the planning board can grant, what, up to 25% relief of parking count?
Yeah, depending on the circumstances, yes.
So if you go beyond that and they can't hit their parking count, do they have to seek a variance?
They'd have to get a variance.
Which is a great lead-in for me. Thank you, Evan.
Yes.
I was just going to tell the board that we'll work with the building inspector regarding whether these are legally pre-existing non-conforming conditions, but if the board could refer it to the building inspector, and if it turns out that variances are needed, if you could also refer it to the ZBA.
Yeah.
GML, this was a local determination, and in terms of seeker, you can declare this to be a type 2 action.
Questions for Kelly? Anybody have any other questions for the applicant or the consultants? You guys have any other questions for us? A little bit more homework on this one, too.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right, so first I'll offer a motion to type this as a type 2 action on the secret and declare this board as lead agency.
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Next motion will be to have Natalie, authorize Natalie for a referral to the ZBA for any and all variances that may be required.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Third motion is going to be for a referral to the building inspector for the determination of pre-existing non-conforming conditions on site.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. So at least
Thank
if the
you.
building inspector comes back and says these are not legally pre-existing, you don't have to come back here to get referred to the ZBA. You'll be able to just to go, proceed with them, get whatever variances if you do need them, and then come back to us.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a good night, sir.
Good night.
You're welcome. Have a good night. Cooking with gas. Woodview Heights, review and discuss revised materials for a proposed 13-lot subdivision, site plan, special permit, ARB, and ridge preservation. Wow, we hit all 5. Said property is located on Hill Avenue in Highland Mills and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Map, Section 204, Block 1, Lot 34.2. You all right, Tommy?
Yes, sir.
There's no dying at planning board meetings.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Stephen Barshov here for the applicant, S. Barshov Law PLLC. I'm only going to speak briefly about what Kelly and I spoke to, and then some of the design professionals, the engineering professionals, can speak a bit more about those aspects of the application. So Natalie's comment letter, I think, properly identified the issue that is facing us immediately, which is the minimum lot size and the history that this matter has regarding variances that were granted by the ZBA after litigation that required that the variance be issued. And I read for the first time actually today the ZBA, I don't know if you all have read it, but maybe you have, the ZBA's decision to grant the
Probably
variance.
sleeping at night. I like to go through and just, read the ZBA decision.
See, I got nothing better to
Nothing
do, right?
better to do.
That's right. So the ZBA, I think, would be fairly characterized as saying, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like this, we don't like that. This is a problem, that's a problem, but we've been told by the judge we have to do this, so we're doing it. And I think that that's, a fair reading of what that document was. Kelly and I spoke about the possibility that as a practical matter, even though this has been around for a long time and the variance has certainly expired that was granted years ago, that maybe there's a practical way of navigating this, at least as to the 6 lots that were previously granted the variance. But the calculus that was brought back, and this is reflected in Natalie's memo, is, but there are other lots, and have those other lots had their lot size calculated the same way, were the same deductions taken? How has the law changed since that variance was granted? Are there additional deductions that are required? And I just did not have the time between getting the comment letter, reading this variance decision, to be able to say I could report to you with some degree of certainty how those things are to be navigated. We did take a quick look at the minimum lot, at the lot sizes, how they're configured now, where the calculations were done, and there's still some matters that we need to go through. So what I was going to say, at least on that issue, is I'll reach out to Kelly offline, and once I have all of the facts together, then you and I can speak, and I'll go over with you what's what. We can talk about it and see if we see that there's a practical way to go through, at least regarding the 6 lots that previously got the variance. What we do as to the other lots, I'm just not sure about. So we'll get back to you at, for both of those. That, I think, is the big issue in terms of how this thing moves forward. But there may be other matters that the other professionals want to discuss that you guys have questions about or thoughts about. Is there anything about this issue that I can address further for the board?
I don't have anything.
Okay, all right. Go, guys.
Good. That was briefly, too. I hate to see if that was longly.
Sorry.
That was brief. I'd hate to see long.
Come on, he's a lawyer. I get paid by the second.
That's a tough act to follow.
James Martinez and Laura Prushke from Engineering and Surveying Properties.
You either speak up or hold the. You can take the mic out. Everybody's afraid to take the mic out of the holder.
So we had the chance to review Natalie's review memo. We went through all the comments, pretty much technical in nature. I don't think we have an issue in going through and addressing them. But as Steve was saying, I think we need kind of clarification and finalization of how the lots are going to be configured before we address like the meat of the comments. And I know the stormwater report was a big part to revise, and that's going to kind of hinge on the way the lots are configured and what we ultimately decide on. So just briefly going over that, that's we're kind of waiting for a direction to go in, and then once we have that, we can go through Natalie's comments and address them one by one.
Questions?
Yeah.
Natalie, do you want to?
Sure. We had a pretty detailed memo, a lot of technical issues that, again, the applicant has already stated that they will work to revise, and, we'll review that on their resubmission. But I do want to just kind of reiterate that the lot area issue, is threshold. I think that something that hasn't been brought up yet tonight is that this current submission included a revised wetland delineation. So previously, the plan showed, I think it was like 3 or 4 pocket wetlands on the site, but now the plan shows that the wetlands are actually all continuous, really bisecting these lots. So part of the code definition for net lot area is that deductions for wetlands are required, which would actually further increase the degree of nonconformity for even the 6 lots that received a ZBA variance. So I think, when Steve and Kelly talk about this, it would be good for James and Laura to have had really the calculations flushed out in, per the code now, including the conditions of the site as they are mapped currently with the revised wetland delineation. I think that's going to be important for the board to consider and possibly the ZBA. The only other thing that I think it's important for me to just continue to say with all of these applications is that the village is under a moratorium for water supply, and that the village's sewer capacity is at a deficit, so that impacts some things. Oh, and then one other thing, sorry. With the wetlands being the way they are, bisecting these lots, and also the changes potentially because of the net lot area calculations and things like that, and in an effort and opportunity to maybe reduce the wetland disturbances that would be required for this development, which now consists of essentially 2 wetlands crossings, on the northern and southern part of the horseshoe, as well as utility construction within the rear yard of the middle lots, essentially, and even a sewer crossing in one area. Maybe it's an opportunity for the applicant to look at a revised arrangement, possibly 2 cul-de-sacs instead of the horseshoe, which would maybe eliminate 1 crossing. And also, we've recommended in our memo for the applicant to explore an opportunity to extend the sewer along Fillmore Court to the planned north part of the subdivision, versus right now, I think only one lot, lot 13, has a sewer service that kind of crosses the backyard of all of those lots in the middle. You know, and maybe there's an opportunity to kind of provide service via the north end on Fillmore. You know, and again, the sewer service for lot 13 also requires that a main be run through those lots with 2 manholes, which, you know, if you kind of flip it to Fillmore, then it's in a public right of way and maybe more accessible for maintenance and things like that. So again, something to consider, and I think it's something that the board wants to kind of, you know, be involved on or in discussions with the applicant as this moves forward, you know, maybe an alternate arrangement. That's all.
Questions for Natalie?
No, I agree 100%. That's one of my big concerns were the crossings for the utility and road over the wetlands, so I'm 100% with you.
I mean, really, until we get what they're doing with the lot sizes, there's not much for us to do here, is there?
Other than secret, no.
Such a great lead-in, thank you. So in terms of seeker, it has been, you know, a long time, that preliminary approval. The applicant's prior attorney had actually said they were no longer pursuing, so that is gone, so you need to commence seeker. So the board can declare its intent to serve as lead agency and type the action as unlisted. And then if you could also refer it to the ZBA, should that be necessary, I think that would be helpful.
Just real quick, Kelly, you said the variances on the 6 lots have expired, correct?
Well,
Okay.
technically, yes. However, from a practical matter with the court's decision, it takes a different role,
Okay.
I'll say.
We'll leave that
So
up to you.
that's something that Steve and I were talking about to see what the court said and then what the ZBA said, because what the ZBA said was that there was a condition and it was based on a prior section A3169E, I think. Let me just throw that out there.
I know that.
And
I
it
wrote it
was
down.
within 90 days, and so about 3 months after that was adopted, the village board adopted a change to that section saying that the expiration wasn't until after a planning board approval was granted if necessary. So that's part of what's at issue here. The other part is we don't know what the actual lot area calculations are. Right now, it just gives the gross area, so.
So
That was
if
the short
if
version,
If the
yeah.
variances hold up on the 6 lots, is that setting any kind of precedent for them to get the variances for the additional lots?
No.
Okay.
I think, as Steve described the ZBA decision, no, we hate this, but the court said we have to. But doesn't
Okay.
apply to these next 6. I don't think that there's a precedent there. Those
So they'll
other
have to
lots
stand on
were
their own.
not, they're gonna have to stand on their own.
Okay.
Those other lots were not considered at all by the ZBA at that time.
Fair enough.
And just to add on to that, and if there was, let's just go down the path, let's assume there was some precedent. It wouldn't be precedent for this board, it would be precedent for the ZBA. So if, let's say, Justice Slobod, let's say her decision, to the extent that it is precedent, and it said X, Y, and Z factors, this is what governs them, Okay, so she's made that determination regarding those 6 lots. She certainly didn't have other lots in front of her.
That's all I was asking.
Right,
just
so
make
that's,
sure it's not
that,
gonna lead into.
that's, listen, if we make that argument, if we had to make that argument, we'd be making that argument to the ZBA, because they're the only ones that have the power to, you know, to ultimately grant those variances anyway. But that, I think, is down the pike.
We got a little road to drive down still. Phil?
We have a memo from June 21st, several items that we need clarification on. We reviewed the site plans, and then there was a letter provided on trip generation from PDE DTS. We would like that to be updated to reflect the trip estimates. We need some additional details on sight lines, where the connection is to Hill Avenue. Hill Avenue is very narrow at that point. There's no dimension on your plan, but it's less than 20 feet. We need that to be looked at. There's a statement that we want the applicant's traffic engineer to provide some more information. On the EAF, it indicates that traffic levels will not increase above current levels in that area. There should be some documentation as to what peak hour volumes are along Hill and Wigan Hill Road. This area is served by other several local streets before you get to Ridge Road or Route 32, and we believe there should be some qualitative discussion. You don't have to analyze every intersection, but some qualitative discussion of where those trips would be destined to and how they may or may not impact the local neighborhood. The site distance information, we just need some profiles, and I think you have a chart on your plan, but we need to see that depicted on the plan also. So those are the key items, and I think once you provide that, we can comment further.
Questions for Phil?
I'm not sure if it's Phil or for Natalie, but Hill Ave is a private road. What effect does that have?
Yeah, I think this came up at the last meeting, and I think ultimately, I think Kelly actually maybe, and sorry if I speak for you, Kelly, but is that I think you had opined maybe that the applicant needed to provide documentation that gave them the right to access Hill Avenue. So, yeah, I think that's, that we carried that comment in our memo, and we'll look for those materials forthcoming.
From everything that we researched, it doesn't have a separate tax lot, and we don't believe that it is a private road.
Well,
We can check with the highway superintendent and see what he says. If it is a private road, then it's probably owned by the adjacent property owners to the middle, and that could be an issue. But that goes back to Natalie's comment about maybe revisiting how this is structured.
Yeah, because the village doesn't take care of the road up there, plowing it or anything. It says private road right on there.
sure.
Well, I'll reach out to Rob just in case.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board, for the applicant? No? All right, so, another one, it's a homework night tonight here at the Woodbury Planning Board. All right, so I'll offer a motion for Natalie for a ZBA referral for any and all variances that may be required for this application.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Aye. I'll offer a motion to declare this board's intent to serve as lead agency and list this as an unlisted action under secret.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Aye. All right, we'll see you after your next submission.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Klein, ARB, 16 Country Hollow, review and discuss documents submitted for ARB and ridge preservation of proposed 1,352 square foot addition to an existing single-family dwelling. Said property is located at 16 Country Hollow in Highland Mills and is known as the Village of Woodbury Tax Maps, Section 247, Lot 5, Lot 8. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joel Eckstein. I'm here for Mr. Klein, the owner. This project is renovations and addition to existing single-family house. The project was approved by the ARB back in 2023, and the client made some changes to the approved plans, and the changes were the originally approved plans didn't have any renovations in the basement, and right now we do have. And also we added a mezzanine for the master bedroom area and for the general house area. We extended a little bit the dining room and kitchen area, and we raised the ceiling so it's a higher house. That was mainly the changes from the inside of the house, and then we also changed the exterior. We changed the colors. The colors is pretty much similar to the previously approved plans, but it's a different design. I think it's a more nicer design than the previously approved plans. And we removed some stone patios and wraparound decks for the house, which affects the lot coverage. It gets us lesser lot coverage. And there was the changes to the plans. Now, the previous meeting, the board requested us to bring back more comparisons for houses within the 300 feet. We submitted those. The proposed house is quite larger than the surrounding houses within the 300 feet, but it is similar to the previously approved plan. It's as mentioned in the comments, it's 7% larger. Mainly the area that makes it larger is the little addition to the kitchen and dining room and the mezzanine area that we added. And that's basically the project. We also submitted letters that the client gave us from the neighbors around, supporting the construction of the addition and the renovations.
Sorry. I heard everything you said. I was just trying to get so on the right is what was originally approved by this board.
Yes.
And this is now what has actually been
Correct.
on the
Yes.
left.
Oh, it's already built?
Yeah, it's built. They're here because they were issued a stop work order.
A little late.
Yeah.
Let me ask you.
You can evaluate this as if it has not yet been built because it was not built in accordance with the plans that were approved.
Thank you.
So, the plans that were originally approved, what was the total square footage on that?
Hold on. Too many spreadsheets now. There are too many documents. That's all.
Well, the approved building footprint was 3,225 square feet. Our memo didn't have the gross floor area listed.
I don't think it's on the original sign. Now, you want to go ahead while I see if I can?
Oh, sure. Yep. I was looking through my files, like that's what you wanted me to do.
Yeah, this is the signed plan, so I'm looking to see if it's on what I signed.
I think Mr. Eckstein described well the proposed changes from the original approval. He also covered a lot of our comments in our memo. So one of the things that we've asked the applicant to do is add the bulk table back to the plan, demonstrating compliance with the code, as well as document the pre-existing legally non-conforming conditions that were approved as part of the former approval, just to carry that forward for the record. At the last meeting, the board had requested more information on homes within 300 feet of the property, which is provided now in this submission for you to consider. Our memo does list a table of floor areas for the surrounding homes as well as the original approval compared to this. And it demonstrates, as Mr. Eckstein said, that the proposed home is substantially larger than the other neighboring homes, but only 7% larger than what was approved as far as the building footprint is concerned. The application is subject to ridge preservation review. As part of the prior approval, you had determined that the site was not visible from the view corridor. As described, the proposed changes it's slightly taller. It's approximately 6 feet. But our memo notes that, due to the topography and the existing vegetation between the view corridor and this site, you should consider whether or not the 6 feet would really change that determination. And then a public hearing is required, a public hearing may be scheduled or waived as permitted by code. That's all I have.
Thank you, Natalie. Questions for Natalie? So 4,252 was the original gross floor area for what was originally approved by the board.
Okay, so we approved 4252.
Of living area or footprint? Living
Footprint.
area. Footprint.
Footprint.
4,200.
Footprint.
It says gross floor area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
total gross.
That's what I'm.
Building footprint is
I mean-
3,225, right?
Yeah, because right now the proposed 11,000 square foot home. What was the size?
What is 11,000 square feet?
No.
Right now, they're proposing 6,786, I think.
Well, I'm looking at the total square footage.
Am I missing here?
Am I reading this wrong?
Let me
You
see.
got it
All
wrong
right,
one.
so I have let's see. Building footprint, 3,225 square feet. we do have a lot coverage calculation from the original.
Yeah, I put, the resolution said that the building footprint will increase to 3225 square feet. from-
3225, so 30% bigger.
What is 30% bigger? It's from 3225 to 34, right?
You're proposing, am I reading wrong? Look, oh, building footprint. You're proposing 4397, correct?
That's not for the footprint, that's for the area. That's for the living area. That's not for the footprint.
Country Hollow.
16 Janice. There's two 16s tonight.
Okay. I'm on the
16
wrong
country and 16.
All right, okay.
If you're adding the table up,
All right.
like really quick math or.
I guess it's my fault for putting both 16s back.
All right.
16s back to back.
So it's going from 3225 to 3460.
Okay.
That makes more sense, right?
Yes.
That's the footprint, and then the gross floor area is going from 4252 to 6786.
Got a couple of questions while he's looking through there too. Did this get a waiver from the moratorium for the original approval?
Yeah.
Yes, on February 9th, 2023.
So would it require a second waiver now because of the difference in the size of the building that they constructed from the original?
I don't believe they're proposing any new
Yeah,
bedrooms.
no new bedroom.
No bedrooms.
So I don't think that they would need to, but I'll take a look at how it was reviewed and approved by the Board of Trustees.
Second is the two renderings that are up there. Again, I'm new to this, so bear with me. But what was built is not even close to what was approved. I mean, it's not even similar. I don't know how that happens, but that's also something I would take into consideration of, you come and get an approval for something, and you build something completely different.